Imagine if you could easily find solutions to make your region or city smarter, greener, better connected, more social, and closer to citizens. The Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform can help you access knowledge about the latest policy trends, discover expert-validated good practices from all over Europe, find solutions in our peer review, get tailored support from our expert team. We can connect you with the right people and organizations. Together, we will find ways to solve your region's or city's challenges. Start your policy learning journey today.
The workshop is brought to you by the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all. And I hope that we're going to have a very exciting workshop together. My name is Katharina Krell. I'm a thematic expert with the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform in charge of the areas Greener Europe and More Connected Europe. And I'm here with my team colleagues, Simon Hunkin, thematic expert like myself for Greener Europe and More Connected Europe, and Vladimir Sestovic, our communication and partnership experts. Word of housekeeping, the audience is not automatically muted, so please keep your mics closed. You can interact with our speakers and with us through the chat. You can also raise your hand if you have a question for our speakers and want to present it yourself. We are recording this workshop as usually, and the recordings and all the presentations will be made available to you shortly after the event, so you don't have to take pictures. All right, so expanding e-mobility. E-mobility, of course, plays a key role in decarbonizing our economy because it reduces the greenhouse gas emissions from the transport sector. If we shift to e-vehicles and they're powered by renewables, it also helps cut our dependence on fossil fuels, and e-mobility improves the air quality. The EU has quite ambitious targets for us. It aims for at least 30 million zero emissions vehicles by 2030, and that is outlined in the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy. And the EU also mandates 100% reduction of CO2 emissions from new cars and vans by 2035. These targets are supported by the alternative fuels infrastructure and for the Fit for 55 package. And these two provide the legislative framework essentially to expand charging infrastructure and accelerate our shift to electric mobility. At Interreg Europe, we focus on the public bodies at the regional and the local levels. And the public authorities are, of course, crucial in enabling this transition because they set the policies, they invest in infrastructure, they lead by example through the electrification of their own fleets, for example. They also can set incentive programs and they're a market player themselves when they're procuring. So the objective of today's workshop is to showcase how different regions and local authorities from across the EU are supporting the expansion of e-mobility in their own territory. And we will have an emphasis on charging infrastructure and EV introduction. So we will discuss with experts which are the success factors behind their approaches in their territories and try to identify the main lessons that are also relevant for other territories' policymakers. And to this end, we have put together a quite interesting agenda full of opportunities for learning and exchange with plenty of interactive elements. After our short introduction, we have a first thematic session where we look into charging infrastructure. We have in this first block 3 presentations coming from our Interreg Europe projects. And these presentations are followed by a block of interactive work with the audience, where we use the tool Mentimeter and the audience can contribute. And we have a discussion then between audience and speakers. After a coffee break, we then have the second session. where we look into selection, procurement, and deployment of the vehicles, again with 3 speakers from 3 projects and 3 exciting regions, with the same structure, followed by an interactive block. And we will conclude with a final discussion table with all our speakers in the last session on the next slide, where you can see that we will mainly talk about challenges for acceptance, because e-mobility still has some acceptance and reputational challenges. We try to identify the key takeaways and close at 1 o'clock sharp. All right. But before we dive into the workshop, let me say a few words about the policy learning platform itself as organizers of this event. We are the second pillar of the Interreg Europe program, alongside the Interreg Europe projects. The policy platform is solely dedicated to knowledge exchange and knowledge flow between regions and policymakers, independently of project participation. And we have 3 main tools. We have a huge knowledge depository on our portal, where you can find thousands of good practices, policy briefs and stories and articles. We have a people and community component where we bring together our community in events like this, or physical events where we talk about thematic topics. And then we have our expertise that is on-demand service, a help desk, a 2-hour matchmaking, or even a 2-day peer review. These on-demand expert services are available to policymakers at regional and local levels, independently of project participation. All right. So I would like to hand over to my colleague to see which resources we already have in the platform on e-mobility.
Yeah, thank you, Katharina, and good morning to everybody also from my side. As Katharina was just saying, our job at the policy learning platform is capitalization. So that is, we draw from the good practices and the lessons learned by Interreg Europe projects with the aim of spreading them to new regions and enabling wider knowledge exchange. So on the right, on this slide here, you'll see our cluster of e-mobility projects from the last programming period. You'll see we had a lot of projects there, which were exclusively focused on e-mobility. They were looking at different aspects, so infrastructure, public transport, and planning, amongst others. So lots of lessons to draw from them. In the new programming period of the project, there aren't so many projects looking exclusively at e-mobility, but instead it's a sub-theme of many of them. So on the left here, you'll see the projects that we've drawn from today. So ZCI, Refocus, Embracer, and Process Mob. So you'll be hearing speakers from these projects in a bit, and be sure to check out their websites for more information. As I said, our aim is to spread lessons from the projects, and since e-mobility was so prominent in the past period, we have a lot that has been done already. So in fact, we have 7 past webinars looking at e-mobility, looking at issues again, such as integration into planning, infrastructure, public transport, fleets, and e-vehicle sharing. We also have 2 past policy briefs available and a matchmaking report. So you can check out all of these resources. Don't go into it now. These links will be made available in the follow-up report. And I'll take this chance to also mention that there will be a new policy brief coming in July, which will draw from the lessons from today's e-workshop.
Thank you, Simon. And now I would like to present you our interactive tool that we will be using extensively throughout the workshop. So it's Mentimeter. I don't know, some of you might know it. It is very easy and intuitive to use. You have 2 ways to use it. You can do it on your mobile phone, just scan the QR code, or you can go in a browser window to the website menti.com and enter the code. And you can find the website and the code also in the chat if you want to copy paste it easily. So I invite you to try to do this now, so that we all do a warm-up and that you're set for our sessions. So I, for instance, open the QR code in my mobile phone window. And to trial, we will do a few Menti interactive questions. For instance, where are you joining from now? You see that there is on your screen a little dot. Actually, this black dot, you can move it, and you move it to where you're joining from, and then you click submit. Always click submit when you do something on Mentimeter, otherwise it is not uploaded to the join screen. And the cool thing is we can see on the map which is filling quite nicely where you're coming from. We also have the outermost areas. We know we have a participant from the Azores. There we go, Rita. Great. Okay, this looks like a cluster around the Benelux, and then a good representation from east to west, north to south, not so much. Okay, great. So we've understood how that works. Then let's see how familiar you are actually with the topic of e-mobility. Now here you see a bar which you can drag. So I am experienced in using e-mobility. You just drag the bar to the right if you are very experienced. Up. And I am experienced in planning e-mobility infrastructure. You drag the bar how you feel. I'm experienced in procuring e-vehicles. Okay. And then you submit again. And then we can see where there is a peak. It means we have a concentration of people that is currently, I would say, medium experienced in using e-mobility, even less experienced in planning, and least experienced in procuring e-vehicles. Well, I agree. That is about reflecting my expertise. Okay, that's great. And then let's move to the last feature of Mentimeter. It's a world cloud. You can type what you consider the main benefits of e-mobility. And again, don't forget to submit. You can type up to 3 entries here. Okay, and you see the word cloud is building. Clean, 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 quiet, silent, efficient. Yeah, I think the silence argument is just trending after the clean argument expressed in different words. Self-consumption, environmental awareness, energy independence, there we go. Cost reduction, that's interesting. Eco-friendly, all right. Dynamic, price, urban renewal, grid network, sustainability. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for contributing to our word cloud. And I think now we're all warmed up with the Mentimeter. We can proceed to the first session, and Simon is moderating this one. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, indeed, I'll be your moderator for this session, looking at rolling out charging infrastructure for e-mobility. The availability of reliable, accessible, and efficient charging points is essential for the uptake of e-vehicles. A well-distributed charging network helps to reduce range anxiety and enables the widespread adoption of EVs across different regions. However, deployment faces several challenges, like high upfront investment costs, uneven geographic distribution, especially in rural and underserved areas, grid capacity limitations, and also challenges for planning to meet supply and demand needs. So it's a complex puzzle, which involves multiple stakeholders, from utilities and city planners to technology providers and policymakers. We'll have 3 presentations in this session looking at exactly these challenges, and this will be followed by an interactive session. So yeah, this is an e-workshop. That means that there is some work. So we'd like you to consider some points during the presentations, because we'll be asking you for inputs after the presentations. So during these presentations, please note down and think about barriers to rollout, key stakeholders to engage, arguments for investment in infrastructure, and different types of policy intervention. We'll be coming back to you after the presentations are done. Also, as Katharina said, if you have questions to the speakers, you can put your hand up and we'll invite you to speak after each presentation, so don't be shy. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and pass over to the first speaker of this session. This is Giuliano Abingado from the Erasmus Center for Urban Port and Transport Economics, representing the ZCI project. So Giuliano, please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon and Katharina, for the introduction. I hope you see the screen, so if not, I will hear from you. As Simon said, I work for the Erasmus University Rotterdam, for the Erasmus Center for Urban Port and Transport Economics, just a long name, but it's just a research institute of the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. We are let's say, the advisory partner within the ZCI project. Please see this. So I'm not one. I do not represent a local authority or a regional authority. So I do not implement let's say a good practice myself. What I'm going to do, and so see this presentation as just kind of introduction for the whole webinar. Because it's the experience we see. I will show you some experience we had in ZCI. There are some of the main issues we came across in the last years when implementing, let's say, EV charging infrastructure. So basically, it has already been said, but I think it's very important to stress again. EVs are growing. Katharina mentioned it already. 30 million is the aim, and so the availability of charging infrastructure must grow accordingly. Local or regional authority plays a fundamental role in here. And please, in case there is some city that thinks, yeah, but we will build a car-free city or stuff like that, well, it will be only probably for a very small part of your city. So you do need charging infrastructure, because we will still have a lot of cars in the future. They are not going to disappear. There's absolutely no sign for that. So basically we have to deal, and we know that cars will be electric, okay, at least for the next 20, 30 years, then we will see. But so you do need charging infrastructure. Very important, what we found out in the last two and a half years is that there is a huge, very important link between electric vehicle charging and the grid infrastructure or network congestion that some countries are already experiencing or will experience very soon. So what I'm going to show you now in the next slides are just some examples of what we have seen in ZCI. In a residential area, in the link with charging infrastructure, and about the mobility plan. If you want more information, there will be soon. There will be also good practices uploaded on the portal, and of course you can always contact us through either me or through the policy learning platform, the specific partners of this project. Other partners will present themselves later in this project. The first one I want to show you is something about the charging residential areas. That is the example that we have from Mechelen. These are some examples, because of course you always think the charging station, the nice charging infrastructure, but that's not the only ones, okay? Especially when it comes to in residential area, you will still have this example. And of course, charging infrastructure must be safe and suit the urban environment. This you might say, okay, it's not a big issue if you see a car like this, but if in the future we will have 30 million cars in Europe, and many of them are in residential area, and you have millions of cars like this, well, it's not the picture you would like to have in your neighborhood. So one possible solution is, because building charging infrastructure, of course, means infrastructure, means costs, and means, well, basically roadworks. One solution they developed, they are working that, meet Archie. Archie is just, you can see, this is well, a charging infrastructure that's actually attached to a house and can make use of the electric infrastructure of the house. So you don't need any kind of infrastructure on the footpath. And it's possible to share with the neighbor. There is no heavy infrastructure works. You don't have to open roads, and there is no cable on the footpath, so there is no limitation on that. It's just an example, okay? It's an experiment, it's a pilot, but it's an idea of how you can avoid huge infrastructural costs to provide charging infrastructure, or even in neighborhoods where probably there is not enough space, because basically here you make use of the existing electricity grid of your house, basically. This is just an example, okay? So just to give you that is one issue where you can do in neighborhood residential areas, especially. A second important issue that I want to discuss, because something that came up almost every meeting we had, is the behavior of people and the influence that it has on the electricity grid. This is just for your information. This we take the same example from our partner Fluvius, that is one of the stakeholders with Mechelen, that is one of the partners. Remember, when we talk about the EV vehicles, we're not talking about only cars, okay? We're talking also about vans, and these are getting more and more because we like order things online, and well, someone has to deliver them. Also, the heavy trucks will sooner or later, at slower pace than the cars, but also they are becoming electric, and of course public transport. So we are talking about a huge amount of electricity here. What is very important here is to understand that's what we call the duck curve. That's a little bit here. So this is the time of the day, and this is the use of energy, basically, and you have a maximum capacity. Electrification of the network of the fleet, let's say, means basically higher consumption in terms of volume, higher simultaneous behavior, because everyone comes home at night and they want to charge at the same time, and that means a higher system peak. The peak will be here, and a higher impact on the grid. Just for your information, probably you know because you're all expert, but having one electric vehicles, normally speaking, it doubles the electricity needs that you have for your household. Okay, if then you also stop having a heating system with using gas and using electricity for like a heat pump or something like that, then the consumption increase again. And so that means that you have a huge peak in a specific time of the day. Well, to avoid this is something that is absolutely key, because otherwise, and again, if we have 30 million electric vehicles, remember, this can be a huge part of the solution, but they can make the system completely, how do you say, well, we can have a huge blackout if they all charge at the same time, basically. So behavior is also something that has to be very important. This is just to give you an example of predictions in Flanders, in the Flanders region in Belgium. At the moment, there is no congestion risk, but the estimated number of regions, of areas that will have a congestion risk, you see, is basically the whole country, okay? Again, electrification is going to happen, okay? There's nothing that we can stop that, so please consider that. And remember that behavior will play an important role, and either you make a huge investment in the grid, but we're talking about the billions of euros, okay, and a number of years, or you adapt charging behavior to try to understand, to level what's called smart charging, basically, okay? So, and that's something very, very important. The final things I want to mention, that what we saw, so there was a residential area, the grid link, the link is a very big issue. Another thing that we have seen as a very important aspect is that you can develop a whole electric mobility plan that is, of course, a sub part of your sustainable urban mobility plan. There's the example from Parma, where since 2019 they have been working on a set of regulations to attract a plurality of operators. And so the idea is to get more operators for charging infrastructure. It's very important to keep let's say, a kind of free market logic, and to avoid that we have monopoly positions. Already probably you hear sometimes that these people go on holiday somewhere else, and all of a sudden they have to pay an incredible amount of money for charging their cars or stuff like that. So it's very important that there is a plurality of operators. Very, very important that there is a spread of charging charging infrastructure across the whole territory. Okay, of course, if you follow the market logic, they will focus on where there are a lot of demand. There's a lot of demand because you can earn a lot of money. But if this is a service that you will provide to citizens, well, it has to be spread across the whole municipality. And very, very important is that when they decide to locate a set of possible location for charging infrastructure, that the grid is able to do that. Okay, there are many countries. In the Netherlands, we already experienced places where we would like to put charging infrastructure, but it's not possible because the grid operator says, I'm sorry, we do not have enough capacity. So please consider that, because we are at the beginning of the EV, let's say, revolution, but all of a sudden it will go faster than what we think. Again, something that you have to consider when it comes to this kind of plan. So the location is absolutely important. Maximum number of installation for each operator. They all have to. You don't want to create a monopoly positions. The difference, of course, between fast, slow charge, fast charge, ultra fast charger nowadays. The interoperability, this is still a big issue, unfortunately. It is something that you have to address it. You might have rules for dedicated parking spaces. Here, I would like to say, pay attention, because again, we are dealing now with a niche, few cars, few electric vehicles. But as I said, we are hoping to get 30 million. So if you make exemption to parking regulations for 30 million vehicles, well, there's a lot of people that have an exemption, so it doesn't pay attention to that, okay? And of course, the functionality and the quality standards are very, very, very important, okay? So basically, then you see that, okay, this is just an example of the city of Parma, that when they started, they says, okay, we want to have 82 public charging infrastructure managed by 3 different companies, a combination of slow and smart charge and fast charging. That has to be based on the grid availability also. They also already set the number, the prices, as the prices can range between a minimum and maximum. That there is there is no completely free market logic. At the moment, there is a free transit and parking for electric vehicles. Again, this I would say pay attention to this, because once you give this kind of advantages, and plenty of people have those advantages, I can assure you there are plenty of Interreg projects that have worked on parking measures to limit parking access. And the moment in which you give free parking, you have to consider that very, very be clear in communication that has to be temporary, just to promote it. So these are just to give you a few flavor of things. Again, it's talking about a residential area. Remember the link with the energy grid, because it's absolutely fundamental. This can be a huge opportunity to balance the grid, or a huge nightmare if you don't do it, basically. And then consider the fact that within your SAMP, you should think about a full electric mobility plan that focuses on all aspects. And if you have more if you want to have more information, you can either contact me or contact directly one of the partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giuliano, for that presentation. I think 3 very interesting good practices, showing a sort of package of measures. So, I mean, if anybody in the audience has a question, you can put your hand up. You'll find that under the React button. But perhaps I can ask one question in the meantime. In that second practice, you presented the need to sort of shift behavior, to shift these peaks. Could you give some examples of policies for stimulating this kind of behavior change?
Yes, some examples are when you make deals with companies, especially that you see that in many countries now we have the electrification of company fleets. And here is where you have a little bit, you can predict behavior a little bit better, because you can imagine the companies, I don't know, they have either they work during the day or some have shifts at night. So in this case, making deals with large companies, it's important because they have a more predictable behavior than not individual citizens. Individual citizens, you can go home at night, you can go to friends, you can go for dinner. So it's a little bit more difficult to predict the behavior of citizens. With the large companies, you can make deals and says, okay, when they can charge and not, especially when they have larger fleets. Some fleets can charge a different time of the day. Usually they have a very good scheme. So they know when they need a vehicle. So they can say, okay, this vehicle we need later, so we can charge at a low speed. So then you can keep the grid free, let's say. To give you an example, the best predictable behavior are those of airports, because you know exactly when people are leaving and coming back. But also with other companies, that's possible. So there are some examples of that. Other cities are trying to use price incentives, but price incentives always you always have a social aspect of that. That can be an issue when you use price incentives. But there are options like that.
Okay, thank you, Giuliano. I see no hands up. Katharina, you put your hand up, but nope. Okay. Okay, well, looking at timing, perhaps we can jump on to the next presentation already. Thank you, Giuliano. We'll come back to you afterwards for the interactive part. So we'll pass now to our second presenter of the session. This is Paul Fenton from the City of Stockholm, who will present the annual report on electric vehicle charging. So Paul, please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the previous presentation, because I think a lot of things I'm going to talk about have already been mentioned. Let me see if I can get rid of these bits here. Okay. Sorry, just want to move that. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I'm going to talk about our annual report on electric vehicle charging, and I want to give you some context first, because the City of Stockholm has worked for, sorry, I can't remember how to move this little bar on my screen. That's what I'm messing around with. The City of Stockholm has been working with electric vehicles for a very long time, and really seriously since about 2009-10. We started to get clear political targets related to electrification around 2013-14 time, and then politicians very quickly went into the game of giving specific objectives for the number of publicly accessible charging places in the city. So our development has been driven quite strongly by quantifiable political objectives, but they will continue to be driven, I should also say, by these objectives that you see on the screen, that we're really working very hard to have a zero emission city with significantly reduced volumes of car traffic, and to phase out fossil fuels. These are urgent priorities that the whole city organization is being mobilized to work towards. And so if we come to charging, it's really important to put electrification in the context of the broader work. We need to encourage walking and cycling and public transport first, shared mobility. Then we see there's a role for vehicles, and of course a really important role is the facilitation of goods transport around the city. And at the bottom of the list of priorities is the actual fleet of privately owned cars. And of course, there's publicly owned spaces and privately owned spaces that need to be addressed. So since our politicians wanted a large number of visible, accessible electric charging points on the street, we developed an approach to granting access rights, which is a process where we, together with the energy company, together with our traffic planners and other stakeholders, have identified places all over the city where it's suitable to have charging streets. So clusters of charging spots on specific streets where a certain range of criteria are met, like the charging infrastructure won't disturb with other important functions, or with trees, or with cause significant costs and things like this. The access rights agreements are kind of in line with what was mentioned previously. There's no fee for this. The city waives the permitting fees that we normally apply, but we don't invest any money. All of the risk for infrastructure investment is carried by the private actors, and they have to decide their own business model. And what we see is that there's a mix, and the mix is partly related to the grid capacity and partly related to what's commercially viable. The charging infrastructure is really emerging all over the city now. And like I said, there's also the privately owned parking spaces. So in parallel to developing this, we've also worked extensively with property owners and other actors to make sure that there's a range of off-street infrastructure as well. Yeah, the report then, we understand that to monitor our own progress and then also to influence the market and encourage further development, we need this report. We have as a requirement in the permitting process a compulsory data sharing. So the companies establishing their charging points have to provide us with certain information. And we also demand that information from the publicly owned parking company and other publicly owned institutions that have charging. This means we can monitor, we can follow up, we can look at usage patterns, we can better understand the impacts on the grid in certain areas, and that allows us to make decisions about other measures. So to give an example, when we started working on a fully electric building site, we understood already, partly because of this information, that there was no grid capacity in that specific location to implement our project. So we had to find a solution. Improving the grid would cost an enormous amount of money. So we instead have used battery storage to shave the peaks from the energy demand during the day. And that means that the electric construction site can operate fully without any major issues, because the battery is a compensation for the limitations of the grid at that specific location. So the information gives us a lot of room to experiment, but it also costs, and people have had to work with this over time, and we've had to increase the budget for it over time, because the more charging points there are, the more complicated it becomes to compile the data. And you can see the increases on this slide. I won't go into it in great detail, but there's a lot of charging points now in Sweden, and the charging points in Stockholm are a significant portion of the national infrastructure, with over 770,000 annual charging sessions. You can see that there's a lot of normal slow charging in garages off street, but then over half of the charging points are on street, and 15% are fast charging points. And the fast charging points are really important, because that's what people want to use, I would say, the most. We have these companies providing information on, in 2023, over 15,000 charging points. Now it's over 2,500. And this shows you how the number of sessions have developed over time. We're really moving into a new phase, I would say, where electrification is a very significant share of our vehicle fleet, and also has significant impacts, because here you can see the share of the charging and the time of the day for the specific types of charging use, and you see that there is a clear peak in the morning, and another peak in the afternoon. The number of cars charging simultaneously is about 600. And around 20% of the charges being used at the same time. And what that means, of course, is that by rolling out charging infrastructure in the way we've done, we're creating a latent capacity. If all the charges were to get used at the same time, there probably would be a problem for the grid, but that never happens. The vehicles move around and are used in a way that is working for the grid, but maybe is not necessarily optimal for the business models of the different charging providers. So there's scope for improvement, maybe, in the future. But at the moment, this is working to enable market development. And we see many of the sessions are quite short. It's very few sessions that are long. The longer sessions are indoor in garages, which again makes you think that the parking regulations for the short-term on-street parking are reasonably appropriate. That's a 3-hour regulation at the moment, and 30 minutes for fast charging. Parking is a really important instrument because, again, as Juliana said, it shouldn't be free. It should be really appropriately used as an instrument, and we shouldn't be putting charging infrastructure in places where we don't want cars at all. Here's the increasing energy demand. I'll just skip that. The average energy transfer per day more clearly shows this peak in the double peak. And at the weekend, there's a different pattern. The weekend, you can see it's more of an afternoon peak. There's significant scope to do more at night times. Obviously, that again is a business model opportunity for different actors to find a way to get people to charge in new ways. And this takes us back to the question of how much charging is actually required, because we see that the on-street charging points are very often occupied, but they're not being used as charging points. And that's okay, maybe, but it can be problematic at particular locations and particular times of the day if the cars at the charging spots aren't charging. So again, it's good with overcapacity, but then it's not good for efficiency. In terms of the lessons learned, then I'm sorry if I've given a confusing presentation, but we have an enormous amount of data, and that's because we planned for it. We made it a condition as part of the permitting process. There's an understanding from the companies involved that sharing this data helps them understand the market they're operating in without them having to recruit consultants and others to do that work. They can use the publicly available data that gives a very clear insight into the status of the market, and use that to understand where they want to, which areas they want to prioritize and how to work more efficiently. And that's the same for other user groups like taxi drivers or logistic companies and others. We, as a city, find this information really useful for making our own decisions, because we understand we don't need to make a huge public investments in this sector. This can be done with facilitation of actions, but we understand also that for logistics and for construction and other user groups, we do need to be more creative or make additional plans to try and help those sectors electrify faster. The tourist bus sector would be another group where the transport behavior is slightly different to the normal charging behavior of car owners. I think that was it. I apologize if I talked a bit fast.
No, Paul, it's perfectly timed. No problem. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. I don't think it was at all a confusing presentation. We know that Stockholm is really one of the front runners, so I think it's very valuable to have all of these lessons presented. You answered already a couple of my questions that I had. So if anybody has questions to ask, again, put your hand up. If not, I would perhaps follow up on one of the points you had in that concluding slide. You mentioned the importance of making this data public and accessible. Does Stockholm have any kind of dashboard or public visualization where perhaps people can see this data? I mean, how is it accessible?
We have a thing called the Environmental Barometer, where we gather our publicly available data, and this is evolving into something maybe more of a mobility data space kind of approach. And that's we're involved in European Union funded project on that topic and trying to find out how we can further improve how to present a lot of the data here. Because we have really a lot of data, and there's probably areas that we could use in different ways to understand, particularly user needs or possibilities to improve things.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? I see no hands up. Okay, well, in that case, thank you very much, Paul. We'll let you take a little bit of a break until the interactive part, and we'll move to our next speaker now. So our final presenter for this session will be Blanka Adlazek from the Regional Development Agency of Gorinska, which I hope I pronounced correctly, in Slovenia. So Blanka, please share your screen.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So yes, my name is Blanka Odlazak, and I'm working for BSC, Business Support Center, Ltd. Kran, Regional Development Agency of Gorinska. Today, my task is to present good practice that we identified in our region, and more specifically in city municipality of Kran. So our region is an alpine region. It's 70% mountainous area, and of 2,137 square kilometers, and a bit over 33,000 inhabitants. So it is sparsely populated, and the average net monthly income is 1,420 euros, and it has 71.7 of active working population. City municipality Kran is the only city municipality in the region, and it has an area of 151 square kilometers with 57,000 inhabitants. Also, the population sparsity per square kilometers is 378 residents, and the average age of population is 42.7 years. Now, here are two fun facts. The city municipality of Kran is 6 kilometers away from the national airport, Jože Pučnik. And the main topic of today is that they actually set up 43 domicile private, public, and 15 AC public charging stations with additional public charging, semi-public charging stations for electric buses. So why they started to engage in this action? the reason is that they are a part of 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030 initiative. So this action that I'm going to present is actually a really small part of overall package of actions that are prepared by the municipality to get to the final goal. So how did they approach this? Of course, first of all, they needed to prepare the policy baseline, but they also started with creating a consortium. There, of course, they had a leading role in this consortium. They created it in 3 stages. They issued an invitation to everybody, and the organization could apply with their ideas. They checked all the ideas, and they invited the most interesting companies for a dialogue, and then they did the tender. So at the end, they contracted the Institute for Private-Public Partnership because they introduced to them this model. Elektrogorynska is actually the regional distributor of electric energy. We were kind of supporting them in terms of overcoming the policy hurdles, because at that time, actually, we were testing the action plan for improvement of operational program for European cohesion policy for 2021-2027 in EMU-POLI project. So this was really a good timing to support them in this. And company RICO is also an expert in electricity solution and mobility, and they are kind of contributed to the whole project. And Vizije Mobilnosti is now the CPO of electric charging station, and also the manager of car sharing system. And there were also some other companies like utility company of the city municipality Kranj and Porsche Slovenia, who is providing the e-vehicles. So the electric charging stations investments are actually one pillar of the integral project that is kind of formed with 3 investment pillars. So one is setting the electric charging infrastructure, then introducing electric vehicle to public fleet, eliminating the fleet of internal combustion engines vehicles, and optimizing it, and then also kind of setting up the solar power plant, and being kind of independent in this and producing local energy. And for the peak shavings, as we heard in the first introductions, are very, very important. They also set up the energy storage system. And to manage this very well, they also developed a management system, a digital management system. All this has been done with the build, transfer, and operate principle, which long-term really reduced the operational costs, so OPEX. And the key goals I already introduced in the previous slide, the main ones. But okay, just to recap, to set up the public infrastructure for electromobility, to use and set up their own infrastructure for the production of the electricity from renewable energy sources, and to have a kind of control over this, and replace 130 vehicles with internal combustion engines, reduce the number basically almost in half, more than half, also by creating this public e-car sharing system for public organizations and the municipality, reduce the pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, and save at least 452 megawatt hour of energy, or in other words, 150 tons of CO2 in 15 years. This is as much CO2 as basically 7,700 trees absorb. Then on the long term, their goal is to be local self-sufficient in electricity provision. And of course, the promotion of electromobility is also one of their key goals. So the key milestones, they started this in 2019 with decision of City Council in November 2019. In 2020, the completion of pre-investment activities were done. And from 2021 to 2022, they purchased all the equipment, the land, they did the installations, they set up the bus charging stations, and put it into operation. They did the technical inspection, information analysis, the permits acquisition, and a lot more actually. So in 2022 to 2023, they already 4 bus electric charging stations were installed, totaling in 300 kilowatt charging power across 2 locations, each having 2 charging points and additional battery electric vehicle charging points. These locations include provision for future expansion, with one site featuring 300 kilowatt battery storage unit and a planned 100 kilowatt solar power plant. They set up 15 electric charging stations in the municipality for public administration, car sharing, and public use. And they installed 43 electric charging stations, domicile, for utility cars and public institution car sharing system. They needed resources for that. It came a little bit over 1.1 million euros, and actually, they really, for the municipality, they really reduced the capex with grants from Climate Change Fund, EU Cohesion Fund, and ELINA facility for technical assistance. And I mean, the evidence of success is that they really, whatever they planned, they actually set up, and it's really working perfectly now, and expanding actually. So in terms of replicability, yes, it is very important to plan well, to have the policy baseline, to actually have the will of decision makers, because they are really proactive in this segment, and they're far ahead of basically every other municipality in the region, and many other regions in Slovenia. And we have like 18 municipalities in the region. So it's a good practice also for other municipalities to follow. But it really does depend on a mayor, actually, whether they believe in electric mobility, or they think that it's something, you know, that they can still kind of postpone. And mostly, you know, they're not so proactive, and they're really waiting for the ad hoc opportunities in terms of grants. So their financial input is really minimal. And it's understandable, because they're like smaller municipalities in the rural areas. But still, you know, when you start planning like this, and when you start, you know, planning the integral projects, not ad hoc, seeking ad hoc opportunities, and just trying to buy some equipment there, and not really having a vision and a plan like the city municipality of Krell did, you know, then it's not a really, you know, the results are not really that good. But here, you know, they are. And the good practice has been recognized by others, by 9 municipalities in Slovenia, and 2 state-owned companies, like the transmission system operator and also Post of Slovenia. And they adopted this model and are joining forces to implement mobility in a similar manner, the electric mobility. So also, one of the aspects that was really important is this public-private partnerships, reducing again the OPEX long-term, and, you know, the grants, reducing the CapEx for the municipality. And overall, it just enhanced the capacity of city administration, not just knowledge capacity, but also the capacity of using electric mobility. And this car sharing system works really well, and we promoted it through other projects to other municipalities in our region. And some really recognize the added value of it, and are contracting now the company managing this public e-car sharing system and using it. So we are really happy that we could be at least a little segment of this project.
Okay.
And yeah, this is, you know, really a good example for basically sharing economy. This is all from my side. I hope I haven't been long. I'm going to stop sharing. So
Thank you very much.
Questions now.
Yes, thank you, Blanca. We started a little bit late, so I gave you a couple of extra minutes, but we'll be quick, I think, with the questions round. I don't see any hands up from the audience. I assume everybody is saving their great thoughts for the interactive session. So yeah, I mean, I liked what you had to say about this being, you know, an integral project, the need for these 4 pillars. I mean, they cannot stand by themselves. The EV, the charging, the renewables, the optimization. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about, like very briefly, the next steps for this project.
Well, like I said, some of the companies, especially the state, they're where this major hub at the location of e-bus charging stations, They are now planning a bigger hub for the setting up the public charging infrastructure, not just for battery electric personal vehicles, but also expanding the charging infrastructure for buses and for heavy duty vehicles and smaller, vans, basically, with fast charging stations. So this is one thing that they are now really engaging in terms of the city municipality. But yeah,
Oops, I'm just sharing my screen in
yeah.
advance, but yeah.
Okay. So yeah, but basically they did the optimization also of their vehicle fleet, and now they changed from 4 electric buses. They upgraded it to 8 electric buses already, and are now having the procedure of acquiring another 4 electric buses. So their fleet, the total fleet of electric buses in the city municipality of Krell is 16 buses. So they're gradually moving toward electrification of the whole bus fleet.
Okay, thank you very much, Blanca.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'll ask you to keep your camera on for a moment, and we'll ask Juliana and Paul to come back on as well. So you'll see everybody on the slide in front of you, the instructions again for joining the Menti. What we'll do now is go through some questions. We'll ask you to make your inputs through this. And then we will ask you to submit your answers to our questions, and then after each question, we'll have a vote. And after this vote, we'll ask our speakers to respond to what they see as the results. So our first question, and you should see this on your Menti, is what are the main barriers that you have encountered or that you anticipate for rolling out infrastructure in your own region? Okay, we have one here, lack of political will, public liability, political resistance. So again, lack of political will, perhaps. Costs, grid capacity, national government is counterproductive approach, lack of space. Infrastructure ownership, financing, network, resistance to change, financing again. If I press space here, it should regroup these into smaller. So financing, grid capacity, political resistance, installation costs, space availability. Okay, so we can go now into voting. You will have 3 votes to choose which of these 3 issues, financing, grid capacity, political resistance, installation costs, or space availability, you think are the most important challenges? Okay, 1 person voted, 2 people have voted. Don't forget to hit submit votes at the bottom after you've selected your top barriers. Okay, I will let this one more vote, and then we'll show the results. There we go. So we have 11 choosing financing as the main barrier, political resistance coming in second, grid capacity in third. So perhaps I can turn to our speakers, and perhaps I would put Giuliano on the spot, first of all. Is this what you would have expected to see coming out?
Well, yes and no. I would expect it that for financing, for grid capacity, space availability. Honestly, I didn't expect political resistance. I don't really know what there is to resist here, actually, because I mean, it is happening, and there's absolutely no sign that it's going in any other kind of way. So I wouldn't know what could that be. I mean, I understand that there are political difficulties, of course, and especially when it comes to finance, it's always a big issue. But yeah, I think one of the what also Paul mentioned in his presentation, I think one of the big issues when it comes to grid capacity and financing is basically the $1 million question, or probably the multi-million-dollar question is how many do we have to build, basically, because we have absolutely no clue about that. Because as Paul clearly showed, I mean, we're already building for the peak. There is so we build the how do you say, inefficient infrastructure. On the other side, we know that if we don't do it, well, we might have a problem in the future. So, and that has a huge influence on the financing. Basically, what if we roll out a huge amount of these installations, and in few years' time, we don't need them anymore? What happens with that? From a behavioral point of view, we might expect in the future EV drivers behaving like normally drivers, like in internal combustion engine drivers behave now with gasoline stations. You know, we don't need a gasoline station every 100 meters in Europe, because we know that every now and then when the fuel is low in our car, we know that we have to fuel it. So we might expect this kind of behavior also when people will adapt to using the electric vehicles. The problem is that we have no idea how long it takes, and yeah, well, and again, the point is that the charging will still take a little bit more longer than not what takes it to refueling. So, but for my, it's a little bit for me struggling the political resistance. So I don't know if any of the audience would want to say something about that. What is exactly that political resistance? For me, would be nice.
Yeah. If you put political resistance, perhaps you can type into the chat to let us know a little bit more about the challenges you were facing. So thank you. With that, we can perhaps jump already onto the next poll. So this question was, who are the key stakeholders that you will need to engage in your region for infrastructure rollout? So again, you should see in your Menti the option to submit your answers. Okay, so we're seeing companies, homeowners, government, ministries, municipalities, grid operators. Energy providers. Again, companies and public authorities, DSOs, expert companies, CPUs, renewable energy plants. Okay, I will launch the vote straight away on these. I won't regroup these. So again, same as last time, please select your top 3 most important stakeholders for the rollout of infrastructure. Okay, and that is everybody voted. So let's see the results. Okay, first place, grid operators, followed by government, I assume national level, then ministries, municipalities, energy providers, companies. Very much as expected, we see at the bottom, okay, lower down, homeowners, landowners. Perhaps I can go to Paul now and ask, do you think that there's anybody missing from this map?
I think the groups here are what I'd expect to see. I think to go back to the previous point, why is there political opposition? Political opposition, it takes many forms. One part of political opposition is perhaps that there is an overwhelming focus in e-mobility discussions on the needs of private car users, and private car users are not the main users of the mobility system. Or the transport system, maybe most important users. The private car users in many cities are not always the commuters, but are mainly carrying out leisure and shopping trips and things like this. And so I think we plan for a system very often in a way that is based on assumptions that aren't necessarily valid and don't represent the needs of the main groups. That case has to be made more carefully by cities and by others. I think it, there's a rollout process, there's also a phase out process. And that is also another group of stakeholders that need to be managed or addressed or integrated or involved in different kinds of discussions. It can be people like the people owning fuel stations now. What happens when their client base erodes? And how are their businesses going to survive? Will they be relocated? What kind of needs are there? It can also be, the other kinds of discussions. If you really go for mobility and pedestrianize and have more cycle lanes and things like that, then you're phasing out kinds of infrastructure again. So that influences where you need things to be. And I think in general, some of the political frustration is related to those kinds of discussions. That there are stakeholders missing, but they're not always easy to identify who, and because they're sometimes vocal opponents of electrification, there maybe is a tendency also to ignore the conversation with them.
Okay, thank you. So we should be taking a bit more systemic, thinking also about other mobility actors, but also indeed those who are negatively impacted by the transition.
Simon, if I'm allowed just to enter in this shortly,
Of course.
Which I think what Paul mentioned is also very important, and in the whole issue, because I understand a little bit more the political resistance now. I think that one very important aspect is the social aspect of this electrification. So that we have to avoid that this kind of mobility transitions towards the sustainability is a kind of elitaire thing, where the happy few, very rich people that have flexible jobs, highly educated, and all these kind of things can do it, while let's say the majority of people cannot do it. And then that, I mean, I'm not saying that we have populists as in political election because of that, but it's a kind that we have to consider. So we have to consider in the games of stakeholders also people that normally speaking do not belong here. Those people that do not have the money to buy a Tesla or any other electric vehicles, or those people that have difficulties during sharing mobility, those people that do have to be in the fabric at the 8 o'clock in the morning, they cannot be late. So I think the social dimension should be included. Otherwise, you can get this kind of political resistance, even denying what there is nothing to deny, because it's quite obvious that we need to be a little bit sustainable.
Okay, thank you, Giuliano. Important points. I think that leads very nicely into our next question, so I'll jump ahead to this one here. And this is actually, what are the key arguments for convincing decision makers to invest in infrastructure? So again, you should have the option here to submit your answers. I'll give you 2 minutes to do so. and then we'll go to Blanca to respond to the vote response.
No máximo, vou gastar.
Okay, so we see revenue, emissions reduction, people's needs, business of the future, absolutely needed for decarbonizing our cities, sustainability, modernization, funding support, evolution, a must, very simple. Life cycle cost, climate change, emissions targets, a lot of different options here. I will space these ones together to make it a bit easier to vote on them. Okay, and then we'll go into the vote. Same as last time, you have 3 votes to distribute across these responses. And I will give 10 seconds. And here we go. So the vote believes that the argument of decarbonizing, followed by sustainability, followed by local needs, are the top responses. Blanca, in your presentation, you spoke about the importance of having a dedicated mayor who was convinced by the political arguments. So that's why I thought this was a suitable question for you. Do you agree with this priority of the arguments?
Well, partially, I would say, because at the end of the day, you know, mayors have different convictions, and also, you know, they're just people like everybody else. So, I mean, they're looking at it in terms of it's kind of the same or very similar way when, you know, the car industry in Europe, the German car industry in Europe was looking at the policy, European policy of you know, starting to produce EVs. You know, they were not really believing in the electric mobility. You know. And they used a lot of arguments against it, and it's the same in Slovenia, for instance, in Gorinska region. You know, they said it worked for over 100 years. You know, why we need to change? I mean, we have a good air. You know. I mean, some people are really bothered with the noise, and they're welcoming EVs, especially e-buses, for instance, with open arms. But then, you know, it's then the municipalities, for instance, who are really the main driver of this in terms of implementation, so on, and also the national level for, you know, in terms of public transport, also because they're giving the concessions. You know, they look at it basically, oh, it will make additional costs. Where will the finances come from? It will give us additional work. We don't have really the capacity for it, you know, and if we really don't need to do it, you know, we won't be doing it, you know. And also, you know, I'm talking a lot also with the national level, and their goal is to actually put as much people in public transport and not the electrification of it. You know, so this is really not the priority. So yeah, I mean, in Slovenia, I do identify that there is some resistance in terms of, you know, public authorities. Definitely. I mean, obviously, there are people, you know, also, you know, general public who are definitely not against e-mobility. They're welcoming it, but they don't find it as a priority, because they say, yeah, we are living in a really green environment, the air is good and so on, and we are preaching them with these climate changes and floods and why we need to do it. But we say, well, you know, Slovenia is so small, it's basically a village. It has like 2,200,000 people living, you know. It's like half of one of bigger cities in Europe. So what, even if we go Amish, you know, we are not going to really contribute very much in terms of global impact, you know. So the big countries as USA should do it, you know, and Europe is you know, pushing this too much, you know. And when you try to force ideas, and this is, I mean, I'm working on this since 2018, and you know, I still identify the same issues, the same problems, you know. So yeah, it's really, but it's improving. I have to say, gradually it is improving. We just need to keep trying, moving rocks, and we'll get there. I'm very, very hopeful.
Great. Well, that's a good positive comment to end on. We'll get there if we keep pushing. So
Can
we
I
have
just add a point?
questions.
Sorry.
Very briefly, Paul.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was just that we don't look at the actual vehicles as infrastructure. And in a way they are, the amount of space they take. So any transition where we're not actually talking about that topic is really problematic, because we need lighter and more efficient, safer vehicles, full stop, irrespective of what function they're trying to fulfill. And so there is an opportunity to influence decision makers, because people with large fleets can think about different ways to save money. And of course, that's linked to what national governments are doing and how we set prices for fuels and everything like that. But it's still there's still scope to do things much more efficiently, to have car sharing fleets for corporate fleets and for residential fleets and all that kind of stuff. So lots of scope to do good things.
Yep, and that's a perfect transition actually into the next session. Session 2 is looking entirely at vehicles, so we'll hear more about that after the coffee break. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to Blanca, Giuliano, and Paul for their presentations and for their comments on the vote. We're going to start now the coffee break. So we have 20 minutes for this break. The next session will start at 11:20. However, we wanted to also do a little bit of a fun activity in the break for those who want to participate. So we'll be holding a little quiz, which will start in 10 minutes. This is entirely optional, but if you want to take part in that, join us at 11:10, go and grab a coffee. And Katharina will be putting her Quizmaster hat on to test you all on some e-mobility statistics. So thank you very much, and see you in a moment.
Haha, I see. We already have 19 players ready. That's cool. So you are not all running away for your coffee break. 21 players ready. Yeah, this is more than I would have expected. Well, let's see. Let's try and test your e-mobility knowledge, but okay, and who has got which icon? This is also quite funny. I see panda bears, goats, crocodiles, kings, snowman, watermelons. Okay, good.
And Sweden.
And Sweden. And Sweden, yes. Okay, good. And a little bee and a cancer. Good. All right, well, let's play. So, we have a little quiz for you. And the quiz rewards correct answers, but also speed. First question. Approximately how many public EV charging points were available in the EU by the end of 2023? What do you think? 500,000, 1 million, or something in between? The faster you decide, the quicker you get rewarded. Okay. 22 have voted, 23, and I would say time's up. What's the right answer? Okay, so nobody expected it to be 1 million, all right? And we're between 630,000 and 770,000. Good, well, let's see who was right. There were more than 630,000 charging points. Yes, okay, so we're getting there. All right, next question. 31 players ready. Question 2. Answer quickly, you get better points. How many new public charging stations does the EU need by 2030 to meet market demand? You remember, market demand is expected to be 30 million vehicles. How many charging stations do we need? 3.5 million, 5, 7.3, or 8.8? All right, 22 people voted already. Come on, you have to submit your vote before the time runs out. There we go. Okay. Wow. So the correct answer is 8.8 million. So you see that is more than a factor 10 from what we have now. Way to go for the deployment of our e-vehicle charging infrastructure. Let's see what we have next. As of 2024, which European city has the most EV public charging stations? Okay, of course, they're all big cities that we have here. Is it London, Amsterdam, Paris, or Oslo, which is leading the pack? Who has the most EV charging stations? Okay. Certainly would expect Amsterdam and Oslo to score high here. I know less of Paris and London. What does the audience think? Everybody thinks Oslo is leading. Yes, for the strong Norwegian EV strategy. However, it's Amsterdam which is the winner. Amsterdam has actually passed Oslo, apparently. And by a lot, look at that. Even Paris is higher. Okay, we were all wrong. Good.
Okay, time to recap the scores at the midway point.
Okay. Ha, the quiz leaderboard. Okay,
Yes.
I've been cheating.
Well,
But Tweeto is the fastest, followed by Bell and Dr. Centipede. All right, good. That's an intermediate view. Let's keep going. With 29 players still on board, let's see our next question. Speed is rewarded, guys. As of 2023, which European country had the highest number of EV charging points per 100,000 inhabitants? Okay, so this is looking at density in relation to population. The Netherlands, Norway, Germany, or Sweden? Well, probably the previous question can already give us a little idea of who could be among the leaders. Highest charging point density. Okay, so people still voted for Norway due to their early EV strategy, but we have the Netherlands, which is winning again here. And the Netherlands has soared ahead of Norway when it comes to charge points per capita. And it's 817 charge points per 100,000 inhabitants. This is pretty good. Norway still comes second, followed by Iceland, Denmark, and Belgium. So we're not doomed in Belgium, are we? Well, the big cities are well served anyway. I wonder about the countryside. Let's see our next question. What percentage of new car registrations in the EU were electric vehicles in 2023? About the new cars that we're putting on the roads, how many were EVs? 25%? 15%? Or something in between? Okay, time's almost up. How many percentage of new car registrations? We are all thinking that we are worse than we are. 15%, however, is the highest vote, but we are already putting 22.7% of new cars. Well, and 77 of new van registrations. Now, this is, I think, no, 7.7, not 77. I was already good, very surprised about this finding. Okay, I'm too optimistic here. But 2.4 million new EV vehicles registered. That's not too bad. Okay. And I think almost the last question. What was the market share of electric buses in the EU? Okay, only buses here. 12%, 16%, 20 or 22%. Electric buses.
And this was the last question, so it all hinges on this.
Last possibility to score high. Okay, knowing that buses are typically procured by public bodies, or at least mostly, maybe here we see the impact of public action. And I voted 22%, hoping that there would be a strong public action, but I was not alone, but we're wrong. It's only a 16% market share, the new electric bus registrations in the EU in 2023. But with a high increase. Yeah? So maybe the curve is continuing to grow. Let's see who is the winner of our quiz leaderboard with 1,000. Okay. So Celine is winning, I think, both in speed and in correctness of answer. Applause to whoever you are. Celine with a banana. Okay, great. Well, thank you for having taken part in our little quiz over the break. I personally like it because it allows me to do something fun, whereas usually I have to be seriously moderating. So I swap now my moderator, quiz moderator head to my serious moderator head, and I welcome you to our second session. This session is on selection, procurement, and deployment of e-vehicles. And I would also like to welcome to this session the 50 people who are sitting in a conference room with our first speaker of the session, Darren, in Cork in Ireland, and who are sharing the session with us. So hello there to our extended audience beyond our 51 people here online. So in this session with the next three speakers, we will look into the deployment of e-vehicles, and not only at cars and buses, but also at e-bikes. And we'll look at how to select the right vehicle for the job, how to procure these e-vehicles, and how to introduce them to the public so that the uptake is optimal. Again, after our three speakers, we have an interactive session. And for this session, I ask you to already consider which EVs are best suited for a certain job, what could be procurement challenges, procurement models, and how to introduce the new fleet to the public. All right. But now, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Darren McAdam O'Connell from the Cork Transport and Mobility Forum in Ireland. Darren is a member of our Embracer project, and he's a fervent e-biker, meaning, and not meaning e-motorbiker, but e-bicycle biker. And he's going to take us to explore what's the right tool for the right job, e-bikes or e-cars. Darren, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Welcome to a very sunny Cork City Hall, and a big welcome to all of you to join us with our Embracer partners and stakeholders here. So we're going to talk about what's the best tool for the job. When we're procuring the e-vehicles, we have to look at what's the cost of ownership. And that's not just the cost of ownership for the user, it's the total cost of ownership for society, because we know a vast amount of transport costs are paid by society. That's not going to change. There we go. So I'm going to start by just stating the obvious, give a brief overview so we get it to know what we're talking about. Mobility is a bit different to the rest of our technology, because if you go back, say, to the 1950s, we had mainframes, and then we had microcomputers, and then we had mini computers, and everything has shrunk down and everything's got better. But weirdly, with automobiles, with motor vehicles, the opposite's happened. They've gotten bigger. And that's because the technology fundamentally didn't change. With the switch over to e-mobility, it's not just about a switch of what engine is in the same car. We really should be looking at a sea change of what we're capable of doing with vehicles, but we haven't as of yet. I'm going the wrong way, sorry. There are many different types of e-vehicles. So people also often think of EVs, and they simply think, again, about putting an electric motor instead of an internal combustion engine. But an EV can be anything. It can be anything from your Hummer to a small bike. And really, the key is It should be everything in between, not just two extremes. So there are real advantages to EVs. We all know there's no tailpipe emissions, but the EVs are also just fundamentally more efficient. They're fundamentally much cheaper to build and maintain. They're less noisy, but they don't solve all the problems. They're not a panacea. There's no impact on congestion, no impact on the areas required for parking, no impact on the social isolation that you get from the dominance. And they do have some disadvantages in some circumstances. Either they have a shorter range, or they're going to be heavier and more costly. And remember I said they are cheaper to build and maintain. They're cheaper and lighter. But if you put a battery that's going to give you 500 kilometre ranges, they're no longer cheaper and lighter. And another disadvantage is charging time and demand, which was well explored in the previous session. Fundamental issue. Transit is 10 to 20 times more space efficient in our cities and also in our infrastructure in terms of how many people you can transport in a given space. Cycling is 5 to 10 times more efficient. Cars are not an space-efficient way of moving people around. An EV has no effect on that. Here's an example here. The entire medieval city of Siena is smaller than a single motorway interchange. It's a very poor use of space. The other big issue, this is almost compounded when we take into account the charging, is the parking space is huge. Parking a car takes as much space as providing living space for a person in a city, and it costs as much to build. So if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you're increasing the price by 50% by including parking, and you're increasing the space required. That's an issue that is not addressed. Then we take the other end. The one extreme is where you just put an electric motor into a big, inefficient SUV. The other extreme is where you take a bike, which works very well already, and you add on a small motor. Here, you still have the tape, it's still cheap and whatever, but there's issues. Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide there. It's all right. Then we look at the range of different EVs. We start with the extreme, the SUVs, and we go down to the small little bike. And that's what people think. And the reality is, your ordinary little e-bike is never going to replace everything you can do with a car. But if you look in the middle, there are much more compact, much cheaper EV options, which can do almost everything a car does. You can see there, who can carry 5 people and can carry as much luggage as an SUV, not a small car, for a fraction of the price and a fraction of the impact. So that's important to do it. This has been well, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it was well explored in the previous session. But we have to realize that a huge cost of a switch over to EVs will be upgrading the power grid. We're talking about 8 million chargers in the EU. 8,000 chargers would overwhelm the entire Irish grid. The EU is looking for 1,000 times that number of chargers. That can't be done with our current grid. That has to be thought about. I'm going to skip through here just because we're a bit short on time. So e-bikes allow an ordinary bike to do things that it can't ordinarily do. It keeps people mobile longer. And a big advantage of an EV, of biking, is the health. It allows it to be more diverse. It allows it to more people. Greater speed and efficiency in congested areas, more reliability. You can get further, you can get faster. But it's even more of a game changer for rural areas. And that becomes even more of a game changer than when you have that in between, where it's not simply an e-bike. It's an extended e-bike. It's a larger capacity e-bike. It's an e-bike with maybe a cover. So it becomes an alternative for rural transport that an ordinary bike was not. And I'm going to give you, sorry, I just skipped over there on the slides. There are big advantages to e-bikes over driving. Cheaper to build and maintain, faster and more predictable in urban areas, and sometimes even in rural areas. It's just a more reliable way to get around. Parking is not an issue. It's more flexible. You've got greater access. And the advantage of e-bike over an ordinary bike, hills and wind instantly cease to become a problem. So you can take the hilliest, windiest city and it can be like Amsterdam or Copenhagen is today, where you've got a 50% modal share of cycling, just simply by that. You arrive fresh, you can add cargo capacity that you might previously not be able to do, and you have the ability to add an enclosure. So I'm going to give you just a few case studies here. One was a project we were involved a couple of years ago here with the Environmental Forum and the Transport and Mobility Forum, where we were doing an audit of rural mobility in West Cork. And this required me to travel around a huge area of West Cork and an extensive road network. Now, you would think you need a car. You're going to be covering 200-300 kilometers in a day. You need a car. I was able to do that using an e-bike. There was one day I did 380 kilometers on the e-bike. It was a long day in summer. I had plenty of time to do it. There were charging as I met each of the communities. The bike was plugged in while I had the meeting, was almost up to charge. 380 kilometers covered in a day on an e-bike. Another example of what an e-bike allowed you to do, which you wouldn't be able to do, was a staff exchange to Coimbra in Portugal, which I was able to do on the e-bike by intelligently combining it with the use of the train and the ferry. It made it possible to do a journey that otherwise would be impossible. So, what do we think then is necessary in terms of deployment and setting the priorities? The first thing is, we can't, when it comes to the transition to e-vehicles, we can't think only of standard e-cars and standard e-bikes. We need something in the middle. We can get to 50% modal share using bikes as we have them today. We can't still have 50% on cars. The grids won't take them. It's unacceptable for many reasons. So we need to get another 20 or 30% switching to something that's in between an e-bike and an e-car. Smaller and lighter than an e-car, more powerful than an e-bike and possibly enclosed. So we need to have design standards that reflect the capabilities of electric vehicles. At the moment, design characteristics or design is designed around a motorway speed. It's designed around a motorway accident. That's not suitable for urban living that we mostly do. The average speed of a vehicle is more like 20 kilometers an hour than 120 kilometers an hour, yet we're designing for 120 kilometers an hour. That needs to change. We also need to be less concerned with range anxiety. That's primarily marketing. Very few journeys are up around the 500 kilometers. Far more journeys are 5 to 10 kilometers. So we need to incentivize the smaller, cheaper vehicles, not the larger, more expensive. And we also need to prioritize our incentives on the people who need them, rural residents, people with large loads. I have this here for reference for people looking at the slides afterwards. I'm not going to go through this because we don't have time, but to give you the idea that a small subsidy can cover the vast majority of the cost of an in-between vehicle or an e-bike, and we can give it to the entire population. Whereas if we combine our subsidies to the more expensive e-cars, they make very little difference for poorer people, and we don't cover the entire population. So that's just really going back over, is that we need to prioritize the smaller, cheaper. We need to rethink our design standards to suit these smaller, more flexible, in-between vehicles. And we need to think beyond the hard boundary between car-centric thinking. We need to move beyond macro mobility and micro mobility to look at that space in between, the macro mobility, not the mega mobility, not the micro. We need to have a macro, which is at present missing. So that's mostly what I'm here to say. I don't want to go too long on the time, so I might leave it there and leave some time for questions. Thanks.
Haha. So you get the real applause. You get the applause from us virtually, but you get the real applause. Can you send us a picture from your room so that we see who's there?
Yes, we have a cameraman at the back who's going to
Awesome.
zoom out.
Hi guys, good to see you.
I was a mix over time, so I hope I didn't go over time. I had to cut down
No,
my time
you
a
are
little too.
absolutely perfect.
Perfect. I knew I could hit it, but I did have to rush a little.
Yes, all good, all good. All right. So we will share the recordings and the presentations. There was a question on that. But Darren, you make a very good point about the need for lighter e-vehicles and to break the trend towards ever larger and heavier vehicles. And you say that we need to incentivize this. Are you thinking of tender specifications for public fleets or of incentive schemes for the private sector?
That yes, but I think more importantly, we have to think about our specifications. When we're having, say, car-free city centres or car-free routes, when we're talking about low emission zones, I think there is a place for saying that this is a zone in a city where we're not going to allow larger vehicles. And maybe we have to have a number of classes. You have the very large vehicles which we're seeing on our roads today, which are frankly inappropriate and we never saw previously. And perhaps we should say we're just not going to allow them into the cities. And then perhaps in the centre areas, we've got the low emission zones. We should be saying, we should be looking at this kind of macro mobility area in that we don't allow vehicles beyond 2 meters. We don't allow vehicles more than 1.5 meters in width. We don't allow vehicles over 500 kilos. And we start setting those. This won't happen instantly, and we can't put those regulations until we have some of these on the road. But when I was preparing this presentation, some of the pictures there I found from our local car dealers who are selling, I think, the Citroen Ami, which is one of the ones I showed there, which absolutely fits this sort of vehicle that I'm imagining. So it's real, and European car makers are producing them, if in small volumes. To get them to large volumes and to get a diversity of production, absolutely. We need the public sector to lead the way in terms of fleet procurement, but also possibly in scaling back the incentives for large EV vehicles. So we could say, no, you can't get an incentive for an EV that weighs more than, say, 2 tons or whatever, but you can get an increased incentive for a lighter vehicle. So we have to use the public to kickstart this. And once it's kick-started, we need to use regulation and limiting access to cities in order to incentivize people to use these vehicles because they're more appropriate and they can do things then that the larger vehicles can't, because they can physically, in our medieval European cities, there are streets where physically they can fit down that the other vehicles can't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you put your finger on a pain point, and it's a blind spot in our regulations, and nobody so far dares somehow to touch the SUVs. Although the city of Paris has started doubling the parking fees for SUVs.
Exactly. And I think that's one thing I meant to say, is that we need to provide parking spaces that are smaller and say, yes, you can find a parking space if you've got an appropriate sized vehicle. If you don't, maybe you're going to have to park out in the park and ride. We are not going to provide parking spaces for inappropriately sized vehicles in our cities.
Well, this is going to take a lot of political guts to do it, but you're right. We are changing from the internal combustion motor to e-vehicles, and maybe it's also the time to think about the vehicle in itself and not just the motor.
Yeah.
So thank you for this enlightening contribution. Do we have anybody who wants to say something directly to? No, I don't see anybody. Great. Then Darren, thank you so much.
We have a question in the room here in Cork.
All right. One question from the room in Cork. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Darren, just something I wanted to comment on is obviously being involved in the electric vehicle industry and working on, for example, products like the postal, our ANPOS is our postal service here in Ireland. And we work on these trike type vehicles, which are incredible. And I'm going to name drop here because I can. Radkucha, a German brand, you see the ANPOS vehicles.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can look at legislating those and I know it's a difficult ask, but what is the way forward? What is the trajectory forward to be able to enable these kind of vehicles in the city, for example? I mean, can we not use them as ride sharing in terms of taxis? I know we used to, before I came to Cork, we used to have kind of like a tuk-tuk type of taxi service, and all of these I think would be able to eliminate the need for internal combustion motors, and in terms of being able to move people faster, more efficiently, and move cargo more efficiently. I mean, I look at Amsterdam, and I had the privilege of visiting Amsterdam 2 years ago, and it just, coming from Africa, it blew my mind. It's incredible. So how can we move forward and implement things like this?
Well,
quick answer, please.
Yeah, I could say there's only one entity in the world that's capable of providing that type of regulatory change and setting up that regulatory system, and that is the EU. It's the EU that de facto sets global standards, and this is exactly an EU competency, and that's the answer. Is we need action in the Transport Committee in the EU Parliament, and we need action at the Council of Ministers from Transport at the EU level.
Yeah, it goes back to the political will that we have already mentioned in our first session. Thank you very much, Darren, and your audience, and stay with us for the remainder of the session. And I would like to move on to Hungary, and Vilmos Osser from KTI, the Hungarian Institute of Transport Science and Logistics, and partner of the COSUS-MOP project, is going to present us a cross-border scheme. You don't see it full screen yet. So we're going to look at a cross-border e-bus and shared e-bike scheme. But you're not
Can you see it now, full screen? Good morning.
No, not yet.
Okay, try it again. And maybe done.
Yes, you've got it now.
Okay. So, good morning from my side as well. I would like to present you 2 good practices that we found on the border between Hungary and Slovakia related to e-buses and shared e-bikes, which could be considered as a good practice or for other cities and regions as well around Europe. Next slide, if it is go. Okay, so first of all, I would like to present that I'm from COSUS-MOP project, which is an Interreg Europe program co-financed cooperation between 7 partners around the European Union from 6 member states, and it's already started 1 year ago, and it lasts 3 years. And the aim of this project is to foster regional cross-border public transport by improving the policy instruments. Those policies can be regional or national level transport strategies or regional development documents. The aim is to make the cross-border public transport more accessible, or simply just to make it happen, because in many cases even the infrastructure is there, the services are not running. We are having different analyses from different aspects to find the factors and the reasons why these solutions are not working. And we are collecting also good practices besides the field visits, which could be improved in our policy documents. So we were looking around for good solutions in this field, primarily for the environmental sustainability sensibility. And we found these 2 already working solutions in the Slovak-Hungarian border. Just one slide about the share of the electric buses. As you can see the map of Hungary here, and with the different dots, you can find the different cities' names where fully electric battery-powered buses are in operation right now. These buses were at the beginning of the last year, 2024, nearly 200 buses, electric buses in service. As you can see that in the recent years, there was more and more buses entered into the service, and this number has further grown since then. Now it's over 200 buses in service, not counting those trolley buses, which are going under the wire in the existing trolley bus network in the 3 bigger cities around Hungary, and they can go 4 or 6 kilometers without wire. So new developments are ongoing. The manufacturers, the most popular ones you can see on the top right. So Mercedes-Benz has some e-buses in Hungary, mostly in the Budapest suburban area, but BYD, the Chinese manufacturer, is the market leader already. So let's focus on our case study area. The case study area is here in northwestern part of Hungary and southwestern part of Slovakia. It's more or less, we can say that about halfway between Vienna and Budapest. Also, the Budapest-Vienna main line trains are passing here. But what is important that the city is divided by the Danube, the river Danube, and the northern part is part of the Slovakia. And it is called Komárno officially, with a population of 32,000 inhabitants approximately, while the southern part is part of Hungary. Komárom, it's a bit smaller, it's about 20,000 persons, inhabitants lives there. All the area is quite flat, and there are two bridges now. One bridge is new in the western side of the city, which is more or less used by the bypass traffic. And the interurban traffic between these twin cities are taking place on the old bridge built over 120 years ago. And from Interreg Hungary-Slovakia cooperation between 2018 and 2022, nearly 1 million euro in total, of which 850,000 euro was provided from the European Regional Development Fund, were used to improve the cross-border public transport options between these two cities located in these two different countries, Slovakia and Hungary. As you can see, it was one bus which was procured from the Chinese manufacturer finally. And this is a low-enter bus, so it's accessible and low-floor accessible. And it is fully electric bus with zero emission, a battery-powered bus. And this bus has a range about 300 kilometers. And if it is it needs to be fully charged, then it takes 3.5 hours. And this 300 kilometer of range is enough for that normally 5 kilometers long route, which is on flat terrain. So it's very suitable for this kind of services. And it's a normal bus with about 36 seats and 40 standing places. And the price, as you can see, nearly half of the project, 41% of the project cost was for the bus. But of course, other infrastructure improvements, such as bus stops renovations on the route and smart panels and other smaller improvements and application development took place from this project. The service started already on the 15th of June in 2021, just after the last wave of the coronavirus pandemic. Which made the project a bit delayed. But all in all, after the whole border was again permeable, so there was no more border controls due to the pandemic. From summer 2021, the bus is in continuous service. There are 7 daily services and on the weekends and 11 pairs of buses on the workday. Which is more or less enough for the current needs. The bus line has a number 228, and it is operated by the Hungarian bus national operator or public transport regional public transport operator company, MÁV Group, MÁV Passenger Transport. The fare is, as you can see, has been increased from last December for €1 for an adult and €0.5 for younger ones. And it is completely free over 65 and under 14 years old. You can buy also a monthly pass, which is good for the regular commuters. I forgot to mention that the BYD bus, it was produced locally in the plant of the BYD Europe in Komárom. So it is absolutely, we can say that it's a locally produced product, the bus, of course, from Chinese spare parts. But there is a public service contract in Hungary to cover the losses because these services are loss-making on its own. So even the operation need to be co-financed. And the consequences due to this legal regulation of cabotage, there are 3 stops within Slovakian territory in northern Komárno, where where the local public transport is free of charge for anyone since 2020, but this bus is not auto-operated by the Slovak authorities, so this cannot carry passengers on these 3 stops. So you can just only get off from this bus if you are coming from Hungary, or if you are going to Hungary, you can just only take the bus, so you cannot travel with the bus within Slovakia between these 3 stops. But still, this service is quite cheap compared to the alternative taxi price, which is about 3.5 and 4 euros. And you can see from the timetable on the right side, which is bilingual in Slovak and Hungarian language, you can find all the major points of interest, such as the main line railway station on the Budapest-Vienna main line, or other places such as hospitals or municipalities and other bus stations, which are connected by this service. You can see here in the slide the short extract, print screen from the electronic travel planner application with the real-time timetable options, and just 2 pictures about the bus. It was taken on the inaugural ride over the new bridge, which is on the western side of the city. But normally this bus doesn't run on this bridge, but on the traditional order bridge on the middle of the cities. And I would like to just quickly go to the other project that I want to show you. Is about the Maria Valeria bike. Maria Valeria was a Habsburg princess in the 19th century, and the name is used for the city for a bridge which has been rebuilt from EU co-finance between Slovakia and Hungary, just east of 30 kilometers east of this Komárom that I presented. The city is very similar, but a bit smaller than Komárom, so it is also separated the 2 sides by the river Danube and the Slovak-Hungarian border. But the Slovak side is, in this case, is smaller, just about under 10,000 inhabitants, while Esztergom is a bit bigger than in Hungary. The other city, it's about 28,000 inhabitants. So the project started a bit earlier, already in late 2017, and it has been just finished before the pandemic in March 2022. The revenue service started in February 2020, and it was challenged, of course, by the coming waves of the coronavirus pandemic. The flat is also terrain. The terrain is also flat here as well, just like in Komárom, but there are some smaller hills on the Hungarian side. What was important that this is not a public service obligation service for the operation like the electric bus just previously shown. So somebody who co-finance the losses of the operation should have been found. And in this case, the Suzuki manufacturer, which is a plant in Esztergom, a Japanese car manufacturer, as an advertisement and promotion opportunity, took this place. And they are there for 30 years producing cars for the European and Northern African market. So they have a very good relations with the city. And also they have a lot of commuters from the other side of the border, from the Slovak side as well. And furthermore, T-Systems Hungary was the subcontractor who executed the IT background of this bicycle sharing network. As you know, they need to be installed a good IT, which allows real-time information about the availability of the bikes from the 14 different storage locations, which have been built from this project. There are 6 in Slovakia and 8 in Hungary. And in total, 60 conventional bikes and 45 electric bicycles, shared bicycles, has been procured. And the usage is quite good because except for the pandemic restrictions, there are many tourists in the area. This is one of the sites. There can be day trips organized from Budapest to here, to the Danube band, and to visit this major Catholic church on the Hungarian side. And you can just cross on the bridge by foot or by a local public transport, or now by this electronic or normal shared bikes. You can see here the Suzuki advertisement, who co-finance the losses together with the T-Systems, who operates the network for a discounted price. And you can have an overview about the costs. So there are different prices for, let's say, regular users who are from normally local residents. They can make an annual pass or 6 monthly passes, or there are some other discounts for them. And these subscriptions allows them to use other bicycle sharing schemes in other cities around Hungary. So this can be a good offer for someone who is living in these cities or regularly going to these cities. But for tourists, as I mentioned, it is also an important focus group. They have quite attractive ticket prices, like €3 for 72 hours, or just €1.30 for going 24 hours, which is normally enough for going the other side and coming back. You can check all the data on real time right now in mariabark.eu. They have English, Slovak, and Hungarian versions of the website, and you can see which stations are more or less fully, or where you can pick electric bike or just a normal bike. The area is a bit bigger than the normal central area of the cities, so it extends to the suburbs, which belongs to Esztergom, and also to the railway station, which is a bit out of the city in the Slovak side as well. Actually, before in the Hungarian side, it existed already a shared bicycle system some 5 years before it has been put in operation, but it was a smaller one with 60 bikes and 10 locations. That has been integrated, so the total number of the bicycle docking stations, it's more than, as I mentioned, not just those 8 ones, but the already existing 10 ones, so total 18 can be found on the Hungarian side. And just to summarize what I was presenting here, we believe, and in our experiences, this nearly 4 years of experience with this e-bus service between the two cities works well. So the BYD bus proved to be a reliable bus type for this kind of services. But as I mentioned, only one bus has been procured, and it is enough for the normal operational situations and the charging during the day or just at the end of the service, which is enough even in the winter time or in the hot summer when air condition is on. But sometimes need to be put into the planned maintenance, and then one bus maybe can be replaced by another normal diesel bus, which is in operation on other lines around the cities. As I mentioned, there are some new buses in procurement ongoing. There is a national scheme for incentivizing buses for smaller cities like under 25,000 inhabitant cities for local public transport electric buses, and 2 new buses now under construction for Komárom local buses for the domestic ones. As I mentioned, these rules for the cabotage is a bit problematic for the usage. So within Slovakia, you cannot use the bus only to travel within Slovakia. It would be good if this legal difficulty could be solved. And shared bike usage, of course, it depends, as I mentioned, the weather and the seasonal fluctuations. As a tourism, usually it's stronger from spring to autumn in this part of Europe. And it is very important to take into account the loss co-finances for the operations. And Suzuki is a reliable partner in Esztergom, but there are other cities where they couldn't find such a reliable partner. And in case of economic downturns, these sponsorships can be cancelled, and the operation is in risk in other cases around Hungary in some cities. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and if you have any question, please let me know.
Thank you, Vilmos, for presenting these 2 cross-border cases. I specifically like the fact that we're talking in this session not about cars, but the other e-vehicles, buses and the bikes, and you show the use, and also it's probably a different way of accessibility. We have seen this cross-border aspect, and you said that in the case of the bus, it's a Hungarian company who is operating the line. I have a question about the procurement. Was it done only by the Hungarian bus company, or was it a cross-border combined procurement process?
Yeah, so in the electric bus project, there were 3 project partners: the municipality from Hungary, who was the lead partner. On the Slovak side, there is another company, a municipality-owned company, who operates the city, let's say. So they were receiving money, funds for restoring and modernizing the installations and the bus stops in Slovak side. But the bus itself was procured from the Hungarian side for Volánbusz at that time. Now it has been merged this national transport operator company, MÁV Passenger transport. So they, in the Hungarian side, procured the bus. They could only procure in the second because the first round was a bit higher price. They got offers from only higher prices, and in the second they could find this offer from the local factory of the BYD. And they are the operator of the bus service under a PSO contract, which is a public service obligation, which is financed by the Hungarian Ministry for Transport.
Thank you. And at your work, you have a view over many different schemes. I wonder if you have found any joint procurement of e-vehicles, be it buses or other vehicles. Have you seen any joint procurement examples?
Yeah, I just mentioned briefly that we have in Hungary for about 5 years now a national program which is financed by the ministry for co-financing electric buses. And as I mentioned, there is a separate call for cities under 20 towns, let's say smaller towns under 25,000 inhabitants. And these procurements taking place centrally, so the prices for the buses and all of these electric installation chargers are cheaper. And then later, based on this internal procurement, let's say, division between the different municipalities, the buses are shared, so it's divided. For 2 new buses will go to Komárom, as I mentioned, to the southern side this year, and other cities around Hungary, like smaller fleets, like it was presented before in Slovenia, like that kind of size of cities, few buses.
Okay. So that seems to be a good approach for smaller municipalities that don't have the capacity if the procurement is done by a central body, and it also drives the price down for the participants. Yeah, and also technical support is provided because this company is in a consortium with the Technical University of Győr. It's a Hungarian bigger university for technical studies. So they are having some other pilot buses, also hydrogen power buses and revenue service. I mean, not revenue service, but let's say because they cannot charge money for this service, so it's free for the passengers. But it's under normal operations for testing for 2 years in Budapest, in a suburban road. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think procurement is tricky, especially for things that are new for procuring entities. And we have also seen in our recent webinar on procurement of hydrogen buses that the municipality had to go several rounds before they got it right. So there can be pitfalls. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and electric bicycles, these shared electric bicycles were jointly procured by the Hungarian and the Slovak municipality. So the local governments on both sides, it was a joint procurement. Oh, excellent. Okay. Because that is not just one single bus like here, but a lot of stations and bicycles. Maybe we can look further. Maybe you can find some more information and link that to our material. That's very interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Vilmos. Okay. All right. So let's hand over to our last speaker. So we have the honor of having with us Joana Rita. She's from the regional directorate, and she's the regional director for energy from the government of the Azores. So we are very honored to have you with us and hand you over for your presentation on the situation on e-mobility in the Azores. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't know if you're already singing in the presentation mode. I believe not.
Not yet.
And now?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this workshop. The honor is mine. And I will talk about electric mobility in the Azores, our status point, and what are we doing to promote electric mobility in our region. Before I address this issue of electric mobility, I would like to give you the context of energy in the Azores, because I think it's important to understand the context and why electric mobility is important in our region. So Azores is an archipelago consisting of 9 islands that are not interconnected between them or not interconnected with the mainland. So this is a challenge when we are talking about energy, because we are not micro-isolated systems. And that makes us very dependent on fossil fuels. We have a dependence of our primary energy needs of about 90% on fossil fuels. And our largest consumer of fossil fuels are for electricity production, with about 36%, followed by land transportation with almost 34%. So as you can see, land transport is the second largest consumer. That's why we need to address this issue, and it's a priority for our government to act and promote electric mobility. But this is not the only reason. We believe that our islands have the ideal characteristics to promote electric mobility, because our short daily trips, short daily routes, because you are small islands and usually our trips are short. We are assisting right now with the evolution of the technology, and they are increasing autonomy of the electric vehicles, of the batteries. And also we already have a network of charging stations that is present in all the municipalities of the Azores. Regarding the network, the charging point stations, we already have 69 charging stations across all the municipalities. And I would like to highlight a detail, because they are connected with the mainland network. So the standards are the same in all Portugal area. One of the barriers that we find for people to acquire electric vehicles are its initial costs. So in order to promote that, we develop a financial incentive system that supports people to acquire those vehicles. For instance, a light-duty vehicle can be supported with 10% of its value until the maximum of 3,000 euros for an individual and 2,000 euros for a legal entity. Why this difference? Because the legal entities have some benefits, fiscal benefits, like is sanctioned for VAT and all these things. But it can have some additional benefits, like the scrapping of a combustion vehicle. It allows the incentive to be higher and 1,000 euros. Why? Because we really want to do the transition to internal combustion vehicles to electric vehicles. This incentive is increasing, so people are adhering. The population wants to have that incentives in order to buy their vehicles. So it's been increasing, which is good for us, meaning that people are buying more electric vehicles. I will now like to give you another example that is called Graciosa, the model island. Graciosa is one of the smallest islands in our archipelago. It has about 4,000 inhabitants. It's a very plain island, and it benefits from a private project, but an innovative project at this time, that is called Graciolica. Graciolic is a hybrid system that combines wind and photovoltaic production, and also an energy storage system. That allows these islands to have an integration of renewables of about 63%, which is very considerable if we have into account that is a micro-isolated system. So we believe that this was the ideal island to promote electric mobility because of the higher integration of renewables. The electricity was very high renewables, so it will be interesting to promote electric mobility. So not only vehicles, but Here we start with electric bicycles. We provide 15 bicycles to this island with three charging stations located in different but strategic places in the island, like the airport, near a school, and also in the center of the municipality, which has been a success, and we want to extend it because the population really liked this initiative. Also, we already have 4 charging points of public access. If you have to take into consideration that the island is one of the smallest and has about 4,000 inhabitants, it's an interesting number. We have supported an electric minibus. So the previous operational program that was financed with financial support of the European Commission supports the difference between a combustion vehicle and an electric vehicle. The buses are usually, electric buses are have a higher price than the combustion, and they financed 85% of that difference. The regional director for energy supports the other 15% in order to this island have an electrical minibus. The population that uses the electric vehicle are very pleased with that kind of vehicle, and also its drivers. So they prefer to drive an electric minibus rather than a combustion electric minibus, which I think it's a good thing. Now we will leave the island and try to promote electric mobility in another island, but focused on the city, urban mobility, the project was called Azores Bike in Ribeira Grande city, a city in São Miguel Island, which is the most populated and largest island in the Azores. We acquired 20 bicycles, and already with 300 usage cards for shared use, and 3 automatic electric parking and charging stations that allows to charge 8 bicycles at the same time. The second barrier that we encounter in our region, that people don't buy electric vehicles, not only because of their price, but also because there is some discomfort about the autonomy of that vehicle. And so in order to promote electric mobility, we have an association, the Grupo Desportivo Comercial, that is an automobile association that promotes e-rally annually. This e-rally is a regularity competition that only allows electric vehicles. And this is the way to promote electric mobility, and for some users that never drive an electric vehicle, to drive an electric vehicle. And it's been interesting too, because they can see the autonomy of the vehicle. It's enough for their daily trips, which is one of the people are afraid that the autonomy will not be enough. So it's interesting, and the regional director for energy participated 2 times with its official vehicle, electric vehicle. Another way to promote electric mobility is be involved in several European projects. I like to highlight the EV4EU project, which is financed by the Horizon Europe program. We are focused on the vehicle to everything technology, vehicle to X, and we all try to study the possibilities not to look at a electric vehicle only for mobility purposes, but also see them as a possibility to charge the vehicle when the electricity consumption is very low, and use the vehicle to charge the buildings or assist the grid with hours that are most consumption is needed. So we are testing what will be the tariffs that will be feasible to that kind of exchange, what the impacts this have on the batteries of the vehicles. So it's a case study, but I think will be interesting to see the results of that European project. We are right now revising our electric and mobility plan for our region. We want to evaluate the current plan and incorporate new technological innovations, expand the network of charging stations, see what areas need most charging stations, and promote the adoption of electric vehicles, integrating sustainable transport modes, and encourage collaboration with local businesses, municipalities, stakeholders to support the green mobility solutions. Thank you all. I'm now available for the questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Very interesting last project that you've shown where the e-vehicle itself is used as the battery that can help balance out the discrepancies between demand and supply on the grid. I was waiting if anybody would really mention, because we all say, okay, we have the renewable energy production, and then we have the demand, and we need to build storage. But the car battery can be part of the solution because it is a battery. So it is a storage medium. So very interesting for the insights from this project. I have a question on the strategy where you want to go from now on. I mean, you show the island context. You have a high renewable energy penetration already. Do you aim at the Azores for 100% e-mobility in the future, or what's the perspective?
Well, as it was mentioned here earlier, right now, with the knowledge that we have, the electric vehicles will be the future, the present and also the future. Although when I think in 2050, it might happen some new technology or like hydrogen or sustainable fuels and other alternatives, mainly for the heavy duty transportation means. But yes, I think for us right now, the future is electric vehicles, although we know it's a challenge to renew all the fleet to be electric, and also the green constraints that this might have. But yes, for our islands, the future is electric with the knowledge that we have right now.
And you think you're well set for it? I mean, I'm looking at other islands. They have in common the need to import the fossil fuels and the short range. So typically ideal for e-vehicles. What do you recommend for other islands?
Well, I recommend do an assessment first for why what are the main barriers, why the population don't go to buy electric vehicles or use sustainable modes. And then after do that assessment, try to tackle those issues. Like for instance, if the question is the value of the electric vehicles, maybe to promote some incentive systems. But if the barrier is they are afraid of the autonomy of the vehicle is not enough to do the daily routes, maybe the bet should be on expanding the public charging stations and also to promote events that people can use electric vehicles in order to gain some confidence in this kind of technology. But we need to assess first to see what are the barriers, because not all the islands have the same barriers, I believe, and then try to tackle those issues.
That's true. That's true. So who gets to drive in your annual rally? Is there a competition who should drive the car?
Sometimes, and there is. We try to promote the best employer to do that.
Yes. Very nice. It's always good to have an element of a game that breaks down a lot of resistance. Thank you very much, Joanna. And I would like now to ask all the speakers to turn on their camera, and we go to our second interactive part. You already know the drill, so there are some people who have joined recently. So just scan the QR code or go to the website and enter the number code to join our Menti interactive tool, and then let's play again. So we're having a couple of questions here, and again, everybody can type their responses. We will vote on the responses, and then we will ask the speakers to comment on the responses. What makes an e-vehicle a good fit for your public fleet? Now, this is a question to the audience. Think about your public fleet, and what are the factors that would make an e-vehicle a good fit? And if you type your responses, don't forget to type submit. So we see responses coming in. 0 emissions, environmentally friendly, ecological, that's the environmental argument. Easy reservation, reliability, high percentage of renewable energy in the region. Okay, the autonomy. Example for the community, strong battery. Okay, interesting. Still cheap electricity. Okay, interesting. Yes, and here comes some cost arguments. OPEX low and the service costs are low. And we have electrified a high percentage. The vehicles have to fulfill the functions and to low cost. We push the price down with a procurement process, enabling annual review. That's good. Okay, interesting. Let's see. Can we group these together to make it easier? And I invite you again to vote on which answers you think are most relevant on what makes an e-vehicle a good fit for your public fleet. Yeah, and I will ask Darren. Darren, are you with us? I can't see you. Yes, I can see you. Maybe.
Yep, I'm with you here now. I've just transferred to another room.
Cool. You can already think about commenting the votes that we will show in a minute. Okay, still waiting a little bit. And then thinking about, are these the arguments that you would expect? Or is there anything surprising? Okay, let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay. Darren, you want to comment on this?
I would say the first thing I'd say is that we've got to get beyond thinking about is something an EV or is it not. We need to take it for granted that all vehicles will be EVs. We have to see just what's a good vehicle. We have to assume all vehicles will be EVs. I think what's the most efficient job, what's the most efficient vehicle that can do what I need it to do.
Okay, yeah, that's a strong point. Not think about, is it a good fit at all, but think that it should be the standard. So obviously, And then think about which vehicle for which job, as you have outlined in your presentation. Okay, nice. Then let's move on to the next question. What types of vehicles in your public fleet are best suited for electrification? Now, Darren will say all of them, but we are here looking a little bit for the quick, the low-hanging fruit, where the public fleet should first electrified. All, not Darren. Okay, good. Yeah. So are we looking more at light vehicles or at heavier vehicles, at short range, at low range? Well, I can see. Okay, the answers are all over the place. Perhaps we would have skipped this question after our discussion. But yeah, I mean, I was expecting not to see any heavy-duty vehicles here in the first, apart from buses, if they can count for heavy-duty vehicles. Yeah, but because buses definitely. Yeah. All right, good. Well, that doesn't give us too much insight then. We're still problems with long-range buses and on routes with low population density. Yeah. Any vehicles used for municipal purposes. Okay. All right. Now, then let's skip the voting on this, perhaps, and maybe I should ask one of the speakers if you want to say, is one of the uses not suitable for electrification? Who wants to comment on that? Just take the floor. I can't see you all.
I can say something. So I've written everything, take it all for electrification. But of course, you need to have a backup system as well. So there has to be some emergency infrastructure to provide a backup. And then the backup probably has to be biomethane or some kind of biofuel solution. But that's a controversial topic too. At the moment, hydrogen, I don't think is ready to be a backup system. Maybe one day that will be.
If I come in, I think there will always be niche applications for what's otherwise antiquated technology. We still use steam engines for some very niche applications. We know right now, for instance, long-range aviation isn't there. There will be perhaps vehicles that are used in particular types of tunnel with a particular type of mining that will never become electric for some particular reasons of short circuiting or, heavy vehicles in remote sites. And yes, a certain subset of emergency vehicles that need to be resilient in the case that there's a long-term down in the grid. But these are a tiny number of vehicles, and those cases can well make themselves. I think those situations do not arise very often.
Yeah, fair enough. So essentially the message is municipalities and regions cannot do much wrong. Everything, they can take any part of their public fleet almost, apart from very long range and heavy duty and remote things for electrification. Good. All right. Next question. About procurement. This is a bit more tricky. What procurement models have been used in your territory for e-vehicles? And I hope that the audience will have an idea of that, because there are different models to get to the vehicles. You can procure them, well, you can have them in a project, like many have used European projects. We can use the joint procurement of multiple municipalities, as we've explored with Wilmers on the shared e-bike system. Direct purchase is probably the most straightforward, but there is also possibilities to lease to keep the capex low and pay only through operations. And then, yeah, fleet as a service is a little bit the same. You pay for using the fleet, or a public-private partnership. What do we have? Okay. Direct purchase seems to be the most widespread so far. But some have fleet as a service and leasing. That's interesting. Public-private partnership. Wilmus, would you like to comment on the findings?
I think that Vilmos had to leave.
Oh, Wilmus had to leave. Okay. Anybody else would like to comment on the findings?
I can reply from Stockholm. I think we've tested all of these approaches, and we use different combinations of them in what we do, depending on what we're trying to achieve. Joint procurement is a really complicated one, but we actually started the Swedish electric vehicle market with a big joint procurement where lots and lots of buyers went together and introduced them. Well, it would have been like Nissan Leaf and things like that back in the day. We do an annual procurement for our fleet, and we have this annual procurement review where all of the tenderers have to submit new bids each year. And we do that together with a number of other public sector organizations in Sweden. So that's an interesting case for people to contact us about if they want to know more about it. But there we've seen that by working together and procuring in that particular way, we can really drive down the prices of the vehicles that are being either leased or purchased by the different actors.
Yeah, interesting point. Thank you for sharing the Stockholm experience on that. I would like to explore who from the audience has submitted the public-private partnerships. Maybe you can identify yourself in the chat, and we can follow up with you later on. Next, we would like to explore what's the biggest barrier that you faced when procuring e-vehicles, or that your fellow municipalities, if you haven't been directly procuring, I think many of you haven't directly procured, but what have you heard of the barriers about procuring? Like, is the market ready? Is there enough offer on the market? How long does it take to procure? Is it much longer than procuring normal vehicles? Things like that. What kind of barriers have you faced? Long waiting list for e-buses. Yes, that was what I was thinking. And few tenderers, delays, complicated public contracting procedures.
I have to say that is our experience here. We don't procure as the TMF, but our stakeholders are made up of the public transport providers. And that's very much what I'm hearing is that one of our main stakeholders would be the National Bus Company. And they would love to put e-buses in Cork, but the number they can procure means that they're moving them to smaller cities or towns rather than to Cork because they cannot procure enough. And it makes sense to transition the whole fleet in a particular town or city rather than get them in dribs and drabs, and they just cannot procure enough.
Yeah. Joanna, maybe you can share the experience from the Azores. I think there was also some difficulties and some challenges in procuring.
Yes. It's difficult to have long-range electric buses. It's true, and in many buses, I think the biggest challenge is when we have to have it on the smaller islands, because sometimes they are afraid of the technical assistant will be not provided, because we don't have enough technicians in all the islands to provide that kind of technical assistant if they might need. So yes, we have some tenders that sometimes don't have any. They are desert. They don't have any interest in that. That happens too, because we are at outermost region and we have extra costs to place that electric buses in the islands, and sometimes when the demand is very high in all Europe, it's not attractive to be in the outermost region and to supply that type of equipment. So that happens here too.
Yes, I think it's like a traffic jam as well, because everybody is now gearing up the procurement of e-vehicles. So with the long waiting times, and the tenderers also pick the most attractive tenders, of course. All right, then let's look at our last question, and this question is already triggering then and building the bridge to our ensuing panel discussion. Here we want to really look at ways to build public acceptance. What do you think from the audience are best ways to introduce e-vehicles so that the public acceptance is ensured? Let's see what you come up with. Free transport, free testing, make them affordable. Press conferences and big digital media campaign. Not introduce and just use them in real running conditions. Okay. E-taxis and long-distance e-bikes as a starter to get people used to it. Yes, I think I saw the first e-vehicles in taxis. Awareness campaigns, marketing campaigns, hip design, to buy public ones to set the example, and to put chargers that work and communicate the location. If regional governments go all in on e-vehicles, there will be used cars in a few years trickling down. Yeah, like a second-hand market that doesn't make the purchase so expensive. Okay, these are already some good ideas. All right. So thank you very much for providing your answers. I would like to invite our panelists now, and maybe we can leave these answers here for a moment. Simon, can we see the first answers on the page again? Yeah. And I want to dwell a little bit on the question of acceptance, because mobility still has a reputation problem. The public opinion is improving. We could clearly see it. But many people also say in public they support e-mobility, and then in private they voice doubts, maybe about the battery performance and the costs. Everybody says, oh, they are so expensive, high upfront costs, and an insecurity of what it costs to charge them and to run them. So I would like to ask our panel, have you noticed an evolution in the public opinion and on the e-mobility and on the awareness? Are people getting more educated? And at the same time, you can answer the questions, what do you think could be done to reduce the public resistance and to build trust? And I would like to give you the floor in the order of appearance in the agenda. So that would mean Giuliano would go first.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for this opportunity. People are getting used to that. Sure, I think the major issue is still affordability. Basically, they are too expensive. It's something that we can consider that it will change on the long term. We will expect cheaper vehicles. And everything, people will adapt. So range anxiety will disappear. Charging behavior also will, at a certain moment, the people will get used to it. You know, like we got used to our mobile phones. When we see a red thing on the battery of the mobile phones, we don't panic because we know it. How long is it? The same with the computer? Well, we will do the same with cars. I think very important is also the sharing mobility is affordable. Because at least I'm talking for the Netherlands, sharing mobility, sharing e-bikes and e-mopeds are simply not affordable for a large part of the population, or too expensive. So I think, I mean, all the people will adapt. I think the main issue will be affordability for a while, and we have to consider them to avoid that we make this mobility transition an elite transition.
All right. Yes, good points. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I agree with what Giuliano just said. And then here, you know, we have a fairly mature or maturing market in Stockholm. So most of the technical concerns, I think, are not really borne by the evidence. You know, range isn't an urban issue; it's a rural issue, and then that links to affordability. It's in rural areas maybe where we need more electric vehicles, and that links to the discussion earlier about politics and why certain things are maybe emerging. There's a wider problem than just electrification in society, but no, we really just see that this is going to live its own life. There are more cars going into the second-hand market all the time with electric propulsion, and so yeah, it's happening.
Yes. Okay. Good. Blanca, how do you see that?
I completely agree with Paul that the market is still young. It's kind of it's a technological and economic science behind it, and you have to understand the business, the car business, and it's not as simple, you know, as saying, okay, you know, if we introduce the EVs and all the technologies and so on, and we will impact this, you know, it will have a global impact. It's much more complicated in terms of, you know, acceptance, public acceptance. From my experience, it's like that. People don't mind electric vehicles. You know, it's not like we need to persuade them that electromobility is something good in terms of, you know, all the impacts, and because they like, you know, a lot of people, not all of them, they like, you know, the silence, the ecological aspects, everything. But the point is, the reality is that you need to know the EV market. You need to tackle, you need to know which brands actually already have good batteries. Because, for instance, Stellantis, everybody who knows about EV cars knows that Stellantis batteries have errors. And that means that in few years, the owners of those cars will have a bad experience with EVs. Personally, I know people from the government who were, not early adopters, but they bought a car like 3 years ago, And I'm not going to talk about brand. Everybody can look at, which brands are in the Stellantis group. And he says after 3 years, he says, the computer says that I still have like 85 capacity of the battery, but my range significantly reduced, and I don't know why. And I keep driving my car to the service provider, and nobody knows, And he's not actually a singular case, but so you have to know. You have to know those things. You have to, there are a lot of publications, YouTube videos. You have to monitor this. You have to get educated about this to make a good decision, because also the second market, the prices can drop significantly depending on the brand.
Okay.
People are educated, but they're also a little bit afraid, So, and now there are new batteries coming, solid state batteries, which will improve everything. And also impact on the environment. And I think that since the market is so mature, it just needs time.
Yes, it needs time. Yes.
Yeah, and
thank you, Blanca. Not such a long statement. I'm
yeah.
Also have the other speakers, but yes, very valid points. And sorry to cut you off here a little bit. Since the market is immature and you have so far mentioned that costs are the main concern, what could be done to help the acceptance with regard to cost? Darren, total cost of ownership. I mean, the CapEx is one thing, but a total cost of ownership is something else. Have you seen any good comparisons of a total cost of ownership over, let's say, a 5-year or a 10-year or a 15-year period of an e-vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine? Numbers that can convince?
Everything I've seen suggests that the EV is a far, far lower total cost of ownership. There's less maintenance, there's less things that can go wrong. It's more efficient. The fuel is cheap. Now, it'll have to change at some stage. We're going to have to start charging something to EVs, the equivalent to the fuel duty tax that's charged on internal combustion. But at the moment, it's a no-brainer. If you can afford the upfront cost of an EV, you are saving money every day compared to something equivalent. Having said that, the EVs, for the reasons I went through in my talk, could be far, far cheaper if we were more logical about it. But if we were logical about our transport choices, we would never have been driving cars to begin with. So logic is, I can come here and I get a lot of logical points. That's not going to convince everyone. And I would say in terms of changing over, from the first part of the question you're answering, I think there's a big difference between public procurement and private. For public, even the guy who loves his motors and needs to feel that gear change and the revving of the engine doesn't want to be stuck behind a diesel bus. Even they like it when there's public electric vehicles. For private, when people drive them, they find that they have better performance. They are more responsive. They're cheaper. Like I know, for instance, my father, he's like just amazed that, you know, Ireland is not a warm country or that. So you would expect there to be issues. He's got solar panels on the roof and he's coming up around Christmas, December 9, and going, oh, look, the car's charged already. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning off the solar panels. You know, it's a lot more efficient than people think. It's a lot cheaper than people think. It's a lot more reliable. But you keep hearing these scare stories, and I don't know who we hear those scare stories from because I've never met them, but they do exist. And the problem is that you have if you have a bad experience with the battery, you have a very bad experience, because you can have that even with e-bikes. The e-bike is perfect, only the problem with the battery, and then you have a piece of scrap on your hands. A big problem is that such a large amount of the cost of the vehicle is tied up in the battery. If we were not so obsessed about excessive ranges that people rarely ever use, that would be much less of an issue.
I also think that the total cost is actually much lower, but people usually just see the upfront capex. Joanna, in the Azores, are you communicating also about these cost advantages in the long range? Is the argument for total cost of ownership something that you use in your communication to introduce the e-mobility to the people?
Yes. I think it's one of the reasons of the electric minibus in Graciosa was so successful, because the company that has the concession of the public transportation was so happy with the maintenance cost, because there is almost none in terms of maintenance, and also they don't use fossil fuels, so they save a lot. So the investment was higher, but then in the long term, it's cheaper to use electric vehicles. So yes, this is we do that, we promote that in that way. But we are also having some discussion and some doubt about, and I think this is also one of the barriers, and that we have to enlighten people. It's the batteries, when they reach the end of life cycle, and what we do then with them. So we are trying to present some solution and some companies that do a second life for those batteries, like to use it in this households domestic use to charge like solar panels, or to use that batteries at home. So we have to demonstrate to people that they are a second life for that batteries. They don't go to waste, because some people already have some environmental concerns and are worried about, but what happens with those batteries when you scrap the electric vehicle, when you don't use it anymore? So there is a second life use of that batteries. And I think that this has to be, you have to explain that to people. It's important too.
You're right. People think it's going to waste, and it spoils the good sustainability performance. And the thing with the second life of batteries, I remember in 2005, I was in a conference and I first heard that the not used car batteries are used in building appliances, where they don't have to have this peak performance, this top and this speed that you want to have in a car, but more like a little. The storage is still there, and I think we don't communicate enough about that at all. And this is a very good point. Darren, you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to come in on that, there's a different type of second life, because not everyone has the same needs. And I've seen this in e-bikes and I'm seeing this in e-cars, that there are people who do not require range. They need a car, but they don't need long journeys. I'm thinking of a number of, say, single mothers who have a lot of children to move, but it's never more than 3 or 4 kilometers. And they are getting incredible deals on very old e-cars had smaller batteries when they were built. They've lost range. They're not faulty, but they have a very low range, and that does not bother them in the slightest. And they're finding that they're getting a really cheap vehicle, much cheaper than a second-hand, even internal combustion car, that's much cheaper to run, and they're raving about it. I'm seeing the same with e-bikes, that you have e-bikes that are no longer fit for purpose for, say, delivery drivers or whatever. But there's people who want the odd occasional boost of the e-bike, but have no need for a range, and they're picking them up for 50 and 100 quid.
Yeah, I think these are all very interesting points. Now, let's ask you, who of you is driving an e-vehicle or has already driven an e-vehicle, private or professional? Okay, Blanca. Darren, I don't see your hand. You have driven an e-bike, haven't you?
Yes,
Great.
but I still, like I laid out in my talk where I'm looking for reactions on the thing. I laid out in the talk where an EV allows me to do things I couldn't otherwise do. But 90% of the time, I don't need it. And actually, what I'm riding most days is an old e-bike I got from a delivery driver for 50 euros, which I disconnected the battery and the motor from. Because
Okay. We have taken the point. You are super fit and you don't even need a battery. But if you want to cycle to Coimbra to meet your partners, then maybe.
Most of my journeys are less than 1 kilometer.
Yes, it's true. And we should all be aware of that, that most of our journeys are less than 3 or 5 kilometers, and we can very well do without a car at all. Okay, we're coming to the end of our workshop. I would like to give each of the speakers the possibility to state their main takeaway, and please just do it in 1 or 2 sentences so that we don't run over time. And this time I will start at the end of the order. So Joanna, your key takeaway first.
What a responsibility. No, I think especially for islands, I think it's interesting to promote electric mobility. I think it's important, and if you need anything from us, some tips, some sort of suggestions, we are here to exchange knowledge. This platform is very important to us, European projects, to stay sharp and alert to new technologies and to new ways to promote electric mobility, which is also very important. Thank you all.
Thank you for having been with us. Darren, your key takeaways.
I think my key takeaway is that just like the mobile phone today is not just a phone of 50 years ago that fits in your pocket, it's something radically different. I think the future EVs will not simply be electric cars and electric bikes. They will be something radically different.
Yeah, we're just seeing the beginning of it. Thank you. Okay, Blanca?
I think that e-mobility in general, it takes time. I mean, you can push it, with incentives and so on, but at the end of the day, to really have the result, it needs time. It also needs time, to adjust the energy production and the grid capacities and so on. So it takes time, and it's just, I think I believe in it. And we need to be patient.
A little more. Yes, you're right.
And but also, of course, policy pushes help. I really welcomed the fact that at least for the 50 kilowatt power charging stations, now the post terminals for payments for cards are now need to be set up, at least in the new ones. But again, now the some investors, to avoid this, they are reducing power to 49. So policies needs to be careful about these kind of things to be really effective. So
thank you, Blanca. Paul, 1, 2 sentences?
Yeah, it all works. There are lots of barriers. Cities should use their procurement powers much more aggressively to make this change, and particularly to get the battery sizes down instead of up, and the vehicle sizes and the rest of it.
That's a clear message, and I've also been scribbling away key takeaways, which we'll share with you afterwards. Giuliano, your key takeaway?
Yeah, well, as a researcher, I would like to be a little bit provocative, and I would say, as a key takeaway, I would say, remember, consider the fact that cars, that for the past 20 years have been our worst enemies in cities, might become our best friends in the future if we consider that they will be the battery of our houses and what will keep us running, basically. Consider that, please. It could happen.
Yes, yes, it could happen. And I've seen solar houses, like the whole roof full of PV, and the battery vehicle as part of an independent, self-sufficient system.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's beautiful. So the future is exciting. I would like to thank the speakers for having contributed exciting and insightful cases from your regions. And to end, we have something to offer also to the audience who is not in European projects, in Interreg Europe projects. And I just want to highlight the Interreg Europe peer review service. If your region has a challenge and wants to learn more about e-mobility, for instance, like Blanca has said, starting with a strategy, making a full e-mobility strategy as part of your SUMP, planning the whole rollout. Maybe you want to hear about procurement. Maybe you want to hear about joint procurement. Maybe you want to better try to assess what part of your fleets to electrify first. Don't forget that we have the peer review service. You can apply, unless you are in a European project, Interreg Europe project on the same topic, you can apply to the policy learning platform. Application form is very short. You write your challenge, and we will identify 4 to 5 experts who will come to your region, and we will moderate an exchange that is directly tailored to your needs. It's a really good offer. And if you want to know anything more about it, don't hesitate to write to us. And that is my closing word. In the name of the entire Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform team, we would like to thank you for sitting with us through this event this morning. Simon and Vladimir, I also speak on behalf of you when I extend my thank you to the speakers and the audience. And when we close, there will be a little feedback survey popping up, and there you can also express your interest in further activities and further topics. We always look at your suggestions to program our future events. So it has been a lot of fun with you. Thank you very much, and have a nice rest of day.